The first thing I heard when I opened my eyes for the second time in my life was the metal shriek of locker 417 being forced shut. Not the scream from my past life, not the slap of paper across my face when the invigilator accused me of leaking final exam materials, not the cold laugh of my roommate as she watched me fall from first place to expelled in one afternoon. Just that sharp, ordinary locker sound echoing through the senior corridor like a warning bell only I could understand. I was standing in front of my own locker, my fingers still touching the old combination dial, my school blazer sleeve wrinkled from rushing, my heart hammering so hard I thought the girls passing behind me could hear it. The corridor smelled of floor polish, cheap perfume, exam stress, and rain. On the notice board opposite me, the red banner still read, 7 days until final examination. 7 days. I stared at that date until the numbers blurred. In my last life, 7 days from now, my handwritten review notes would be stolen, copied, edited, and planted back into my locker with one page swapped for a prohibited exam leak printout. My roommate, Clara Vale, would cry in front of the disciplinary panel and say she warned me not to cheat. My classmates would whisper that my perfect grades had always been suspicious. My mother would stand outside the school gate holding an umbrella she forgot to open, soaking wet, apologizing to me as though my disgrace were somehow her fault. And I, stupid, exhausted, betrayed 17-year-old me, would swear I never leaked anything while nobody believed me because Clara had been careful, charming, and fast. But this time, my fingers curled around the lock dial before I could tremble. The code was still my birthday. Of course it was. Clara knew it because she had once smiled at me and said best friends shouldn't have secrets. I turned the dial to open it, pulled out my actual notes, my rough formula cards, my blue folder, my annotated past papers, every piece of evidence she had once used to build my coffin. Then I looked down the hall and saw her reflection in the window glass, neat brown hair, soft eyes, white ribbon tied like innocence itself, watching me with the tiny hunger of someone waiting for an unlocked door. I smiled at the reflection, closed my locker, and did the one thing that had saved my second life before it had even properly begun. I changed the code. I did not confront Clara. That was the first rule I wrote in my head. The old me believed justice had to make noise. The reborn me understood that noise only warned thieves to wear gloves. In my first life, I had tried to defend myself by shouting, begging, explaining every tiny detail, but explanations sounded weak when the other person cried beautifully. Clara had always been good at crying. She could make her lashes tremble, make her voice crack on command, make teachers lean closer and soften. She was the kind of girl who called people sweetie while measuring where to cut. When I turned away from my locker that morning, she came floating over with a cup of milk tea in each hand, smiling as if she had not been watching my fingers. "Mira, you look pale," she said, placing one cup against my wrist. Mira. My name in her mouth used to feel like friendship. Now it felt like a pin pressed into skin. I took the milk tea, but did not drink it. In the last life, she had drugged nothing, poisoned nothing, committed no dramatic crime like a villain in a cheap revenge novel. That was why she had won. Her weapons were smaller. Borrowed pens that never returned, casual questions about where I stored files, gentle reminders that I was too intense, half jokes in group chats that made me seem arrogant, little delays that made me late. "Final week," I said, letting my voice stay flat. "Everyone looks pale." She leaned her shoulder against the locker beside mine, and for 1 second I saw the exact angle she had used when pretending to be devastated before the panel. "You're still making those monster notes, right? You promised I could look at them before finals."
"I'm dying, Mira."
Literally dying. The word promised struck my memory like a ruler across knuckles. I had promised, yes. I had promised because she cried after failing the mock exam. I had promised because she said her scholarship depended on it. I had promised because I thought being first meant helping everyone climb. In the end, I had helped her build a ladder over my body. I unscrewed the milk tea lid, inhaled the sweet smell, then closed it again. "I'm reorganizing them," I said. "They're a mess." Clara's smile thinned for less than a heartbeat. "You? Messy?"
Impossible.
You'd be surprised, I said. Then the bell rang, and her hand twitched toward my locker before she caught herself. I pretended not to notice. I had 7 days, and I needed every one of them to turn her habit into evidence. People think revenge begins with anger, but mine began with stationery. At lunch, while everyone crammed in the cafeteria under buzzing lights, I went to the library's second-floor reference room and spread my notes across a long wooden table. The table had the same scratch on the corner, the same dead plant by the window, the same librarian asleep behind the desk with a stamp still in her hand. My body remembered this week so perfectly that it frightened me. I knew which chair squeaked, which printer jammed, which vending machine stole coins, which teacher would say, "Sleep is important," while assigning 4 chapters of revision. I also knew exactly what Clara would steal because she had told me in the last life without meaning to. During the disciplinary hearing, she had described my leaked notes too accurately. The purple tabs, the summary grids, the page numbers circled twice, the anatomy mnemonics in blue ink, the economics examples copied from Dr. Rowe's board, the final top 60 traps sheet I kept in a sealed envelope inside my locker. That envelope had destroyed me. A fake printout had appeared inside it, with my handwriting copied at the top. Confirmed final predictions. The invigilators found it after an anonymous report. Clara was the anonymous report. The panel said the printout contained suspiciously accurate phrasing from a restricted teacher packet. I never saw that packet, but Clara had because her aunt worked in the administration office and processed internal documents. That was the shape of her genius. Steal from authority, plant on rival, cry beside authority. This time, I made 2 sets of notes. The Real set went into a plain black binder I carried under my blazer and later locked in the music storeroom behind a broken piano whose key I knew from choir duty. The false set stayed beautiful. Too beautiful. I wrote it in my usual clean structure, with colored tabs and tidy headings, but I built it like a glass bridge over a pit. The first 90% was correct enough to pass a quick glance. The last 10%, the part Clara always trusted most because I highlighted it as high yield, contained traps, reverse definitions, outdated case names, plausible but wrong formulas, dates shifted by 1 year, diagrams labeled with tiny errors that would poison an answer. I did not make nonsense. Nonsense warns people. I made confidence. I made wrong answers that looked exactly like my old certainty. Then, on the bottom edge of every 5th page, I pressed a nearly invisible dot pattern with a dry embossing pen. Not enough for a thief to notice. Enough for me to prove which copy was mine. The second rule was patience. That afternoon, Clara acted wounded that I did not sit beside her in history. By evening, she had posted in our class study chat, "Some people become really secretive during finals, lol. Anyway, anyone want a review together like normal humans?" I watched 14 students react with laughing emojis. In my first life, that kind of message would have made me explain myself, soften, offer my notes to prove I was not selfish. Clara understood that guilt was a leash. She never yanked it hard. She just let me feel it tightening. This time, I typed nothing. Instead, I went home, ate dinner with my mother, and watched her pour soup into my bowl with tired hands. She looked younger than I remembered from my last memory of her, when she had cried outside the school gate. Here she was still believing my finals would lift us out of worry. She asked if I was sleeping enough. I said yes. That was a lie, but a merciful one. After she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table until midnight creating my final layer, a revision schedule sheet titled Myra's 7-Day Lockdown Plan. It looked private, embarrassing, exactly like something Clara would photograph and gossip about. I wrote fake study locations on it. Tuesday, library archive desk. Wednesday, South Lab prep room. Thursday, locker review after assembly. Friday, print final predictions. I wanted her to think she was tracking me. I wanted her to feel clever. Then I wrote one true thing at the bottom in tiny letters, a message only visible if someone held the page under angled light because I used clear gel ink. If this page is found outside my possession, it was taken without permission. I almost laughed when I finished, but the sound came out wrong.
It was not joy.
It was the feeling of digging a grave and realizing the shovel fits your hand too well. I slipped the false schedule into the front pocket of the decoy binder. The next morning, I placed that binder in my locker with deliberate care, closed the door, spun the new code, and walked away without looking back. Behind me, the hallway mirror caught Clara's face. Her smile had vanished. The first theft happened before chemistry. I knew because I had taped a single strand of my own hair across the locker seam at knee height, invisible unless you knew where to look. When I returned after second period, the strand was broken. My locker looked untouched. The decoy binder was still there. Clara was clever enough not to take the whole thing. She had probably photographed pages, maybe slipped out the schedule, maybe copied the tab order. She passed me on the way to class with her phone pressed to her chest. "You okay?" she asked. "You keep checking your locker like it owes you money." I tilted my head.
Doi.
Her cheeks warmed just a little. Finals paranoia. Everyone has it. Not everyone. I watched her swallow. The corridor was noisy, but between us there was a silence with teeth. In chemistry, Dr. Sun handed back our mock practical papers. I scored 98. Clara scored 61. She stared at her score like it was an insult written by God. In the last life, that exact score had been the first crack in her mask. She had gripped my sleeve after class and begged to borrow my practical notes because she just didn't think like the examiners. I remembered her tears. I remembered giving her the notes. I remembered her beating me by 2 points in the final after my disqualification because my score became 0. This time, she did not ask in front of others. She waited until we were putting stools up. "Mira," she whispered, "I'm really scared." There it was, the little trembling hook. I stacked my stool slowly.
You should study then.
Her eyes widened. The old Mira would never have said that. She looked around to see if anyone heard. "I am studying." "Then keep going." "Why are you acting like this?" Her voice sharpened, then softened instantly when Dr. Sun glanced over. "I just miss my friend." I wiped my hands on a paper towel. "Your friend is preparing for finals." She touched my arm. Her fingers felt cold. "We always share." I looked at her hand until she removed it. "Not this year." That should have been the moment she backed off, but Clara had never been frightened by closed doors. She was frightened by locked ones. By Wednesday, she had turned the class atmosphere into warm fog. Nobody attacked me directly. That was not her style. Instead, people asked questions that sounded casual and landed like stones. "Mira, are you still doing the group review?" "Mira, Clara said you're upset with everyone." "Mira, did something happen?" "Mira, you know finals aren't a competition, right?" Finals were absolutely a competition. Scholarships were a competition. Ranking was a competition. University recommendations, teacher references, internship lists, dorm placements, even who got called hardworking and who got called obsessive were competitions wearing polite uniforms. The difference was that I had once competed by studying, and Clara competed by borrowing faces. In literature, our teacher asked for volunteers to explain the unseen passage method. I raised my hand, but Clara raised hers half a second later and gave the exact framework for my decoy notes. Not the real method. The decoy one. She spoke confidently. Identify tone shift, isolate symbolic conflict, anchor answer in final paragraph, then relate to authorial contradiction. It sounded elegant. It was incomplete. The real exam rubric punished students who skipped structural progression across the whole passage, and I had written that missing step in my real binder, not the decoy. Mr. Halden frowned slightly while she spoke. "That's one approach," he said, which in teacher language meant please do not use that alone unless you enjoy bleeding marks. Clara sat down glowing anyway because our classmates whispered that she sounded brilliant. I lowered my eyes to my notebook so nobody saw my expression. The trap was working too well. That frightened me more than if it had failed. Because Clara was not just stealing pages, she was stealing the false confidence built into them. She trusted my handwriting more than her own mind. In another life, that trust had killed me. In this one, it had begun to poison her. The interruption came that afternoon in the form of a black envelope. Not metaphorically black, not emotionally black. An actual black envelope slid through the vent of my locker while I stood 3 meters away refilling my water bottle. I saw it fall. I saw Clara see me see it. She froze by the staircase with 2 girls from our dorm, then quickly laughed at something one of them said. My pulse kicked once, hard.
This had not happened in the first timeline.
I crossed the corridor, opened the locker, and lifted the envelope with 2 fingers. No name. Inside was a single photocopied page from my decoy notes, the page titled Final Prediction Grid, Administrative Policy Essay. Across the top someone had written in red marker, "Stop playing smart." For half a second, the floor seemed to tilt. Then I saw the handwriting and almost smiled. Not Clara's. Too angular.
Too heavy on the downstroke.
Her cousin, Elise Vale, class monitor, exam committee assistant, professional whisper collector. In my first life, Elise had sat behind the disciplinary table pretending she barely knew me while submitting the anonymous report form. I had always thought she helped Clara after the theft. Now I understood she had been helping earlier, perhaps from the very beginning. Clara stole my notes. Elise handled institutional access. One thief with tears, one thief with keys. I folded the page once and slid it into my blazer pocket. When I looked up, Clara had disappeared.
Good.
Let her wonder whether I was scared. Let her wonder whether I would run to a teacher. I did neither. I went to the library archive desk, exactly where my fake schedule said I would be, and sat there with the decoy binder open for 40 minutes while pretending to summarize chapters. I left at 4:10 p.m. At 4:13, I doubled back through the staff corridor, climbed the back stairs, and watched from behind the frosted glass panel as Elise slipped into the archive room with her phone already raised. I recorded nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. I simply stood where the security camera could see me standing outside while Elise entered the restricted archive desk area she had no reason to enter. The librarian looked up from her computer and frowned. Elise said something about collecting committee forms. The librarian pointed to the front desk. Elise laughed, backed away, and left empty-handed. But the important thing was her face when she realized the binder on the table was gone. Not fear. Irritation. Like a vending machine had eaten her coin. That was when I understood something so important it steadied me for the rest of the week. Clara did not think she was committing betrayal. She thought she was correcting an unfair advantage. In her mind, my discipline was hoarding, my effort was arrogance, my privacy was cruelty. People like her did not steal because they lacked. They stole because they believed your work had always secretly belonged to them. That night, the class chat filled with another fog message. Clara wrote, "Imagine acting like everyone is trying to steal from you. Stress really shows people's true colors." I stared at the sentence for a long time. My true color in my first life had been panic. This time it was silence. I put my phone face down and opened my real binder. The pages smelled faintly of ink and dust from the music room. I studied until my eyes burned. Every hour, I took 5 minutes to improve the trap. Another invisible watermark, another false correction, another page that looked like a shortcut and led to a wall. I wrote the traps not with rage, but with surgical calm. Each wrong answer had a purpose. If Clara used them in conversation, I would know. If she copied them into her own notes, I would know. If she planted them back, I would know. Evidence, evidence, evidence. That was the third rule. Never rely on people believing your pain. Make the paper speak first. By Thursday morning, Clara's mask had changed from sweet to brave. She arrived in homeroom with swollen eyes and no makeup, letting everyone see she had cried. 2 girls immediately hugged her. I watched from the window seat while rain scratched silver lines down the glass. Our homeroom teacher, Ms. Arden, asked if she was unwell. Clara shook her head with a small smile. "It's nothing. Finals. Friendship stuff." She glanced at me just long enough for the room to follow. The air shifted. There it was again, the invisible trial where I had already been cast as defendant. In my first life, I would have stood up, furious, and the class would have seen exactly what Clara wanted them to see. Sharp Mira, cold Mira, Mira, who thinks she is better. Instead, I opened my bag and took out a small packet of tissues. I walked across the room and placed it on Clara's desk. For final stress, I said. Her eyes flickered. The class went quiet because my kindness broke the script she had written. She had prepared for defensiveness, not softness. Thank you, she whispered.
Of course, I said.
Then, before she could recover, I turned to Ms. Arden. Also, ma'am, can I confirm the academic integrity briefing is still during assembly today? I want to make sure I understand the rules about personal notes, copy materials, and unauthorized exam predictions. Clara's fingers crushed the tissue packet. Ms. Arden looked pleased, because teachers love students who ask rule-based questions before disaster. Yes, absolutely. Good reminder. The room relaxed, but Clara did not. She stared at me as I returned to my seat. For the first time in this new life, I saw something close to uncertainty in her face. It was small, but it was there. A crack under white paint. The assembly should have been boring. In my last life, I barely listened because I thought integrity warnings were for other people. This time, I listened to every word like it was ammunition. The deputy principal, Mr. Orr, stood on stage and explained that all students must keep personal revision materials separate from prohibited exam content. He warned against circulating prediction packets claiming inside knowledge. He said lockers could be inspected if credible concerns were raised. He said possession mattered, but so did provenance, digital records, handwriting, print logs, and witness statements. Clara sat 3 rows ahead, spine straight. Elise sat near the aisle with the exam committee badges, whispering to another monitor. When Mr. Orr mentioned print logs, Elise's head tilted just slightly.
There.
Another crack. The first timeline had moved so fast because I never knew what to ask for. I had stood accused with empty hands. This time, I had already visited the library printer, the student services printer, and the old science block printer. I had printed harmless pages at specific times to create a trail. I had photographed my decoy binder inside my locker after changing the code. I had emailed myself scans of my real notes before storing them. I had kept the black envelope. I had kept the tissue packet Clara crushed because her fingerprints would not matter legally, but psychologically. Every object became part of the stage. After assembly, Mr. Orr stepped down from the platform and students surged toward the exits. I let the crowd push me near him. Sir, I said, can students register ownership of personal notes if they're worried about copying? He looked surprised but not annoyed. You can submit a sealed copy to your subject teacher or year advisor for timestamping.
Thank you, I said.
I might do that. Behind me, a breath caught. I did not turn. I did not need to. Clara had heard. That afternoon, I submitted the real version of my literature framework, chemistry correction sheet, biology diagram summary, and economics essay plan to 4 different teachers under the excuse of wanting feedback. Each teacher marked the time received. Each teacher saw my real work before Clara could replace it. I did not submit everything. A trap needs bait. The decoy binder remained in my locker, heavier now with false importance. I even made a show of guarding it badly. During lunch, I placed it on the bench beside me while buying noodles. During study hall, I left it half-zipped in my bag while going to the bathroom. During dorm prep, I let Clara see a purple tab labeled Final Locker Copy, Do Not Share. Her eyes followed it like a cat following thread. She had not tried to open my locker again because the code had changed, but desire makes thieves creative. At 8:30 p.m., dorm lights dimmed for quiet study. Clara sat at the desk opposite mine, tapping her pen against her teeth. Mira, she said after 20 minutes, can we stop this? I kept writing. Stop what? This weird Cold War.
I'm studying.
No, you're punishing me. I looked up. Her face was arranged in sincerity. In our room's yellow light, she looked almost like the friend I once loved. That was the cruelest part. Betrayal does not always arrive wearing a villain's smile. Sometimes it wears pajamas you wash together, uses your shampoo, knows how you take your tea, and remembers the song you play when anxious. My throat tightened before I could stop it. She saw that and leaned forward. I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. The old Mira would have broken there. The reborn Mira nearly did. Then Clara added, softly, I just need your help for 1 more week. 1 more week. Not your forgiveness. Not your trust. Your help. I closed my notebook. What do you need help with? Hope flashed across her face too quickly. Your final synthesis notes. Just to look. I won't copy them. No, the hope died. Something uglier moved underneath.
You've changed, she said.
Yes, I replied. I finally learned. The second theft happened that night, but not from my locker. It happened from my bag, and I let it. At 10:15 p.m., I pretended to fall asleep early, leaving my backpack near the desk with the decoy binder inside. I had tucked a folded receipt between 2 pages in such a way that it would fall if the binder opened. At 11:03, when the dorm was dark except for the emergency light strip under the door, I heard Clara move. Soft blanket rustle. Bare feet on cold floor. One slow zipper. My body wanted to leap up, to catch her wrist, to ask how dare you while the evidence was still warm. Instead, I kept my breathing even and stared through barely open lashes at the shadow of my roommate bending over my bag. She moved with practice. Not frantic, not guilty. Efficient. She took photos, page after page, the phone glow lighting her face from below until she looked less like a girl and more like a ghost haunting the scene of a crime she had not yet committed. Then she paused at the final prediction grid. Her lips parted. She photographed it twice. She found the fake schedule. She photographed that too. When she was done, she slid everything back almost perfectly. Almost. The receipt fell under my chair. She did not notice. At 11:19, she returned to bed. I waited until her breathing slowed, then got up, picked up the receipt, and wrote the time on it. My hands shook only after I sat down. Not because I was afraid of Clara anymore. Because watching someone betray you calmly is worse than hearing them deny it later. Denial is theater. The act itself is truth. I wanted to wake her and ask whether she ever loved me even a little. I wanted to ask if my kindness had bored her, if my success had offended her, if she chose me as a target or simply found me convenient. Instead, I placed the receipt into an envelope with the black warning note. Evidence, I reminded myself. Paper speaks first. Friday arrived sharp and bright, the rain gone. The sky blue in the cruel way skies are blue on days that ruin people. In my first life, Friday was the day Clara planted the fake leak printout in my locker. I had gone to morning review, returned at lunch, and found 2 teachers waiting near locker 417 with Mr. Orr. I remembered the exact shape of their shadows on the floor. I remembered laughing because I thought there had been a mistake. Then they opened my locker, found the envelope, found the fake page, found my future burning quietly inside school property. This time, I reached the corridor early. I opened my locker, removed the decoy binder, and placed inside it a new sealed envelope labeled Top 60 Traps. That title was irresistible because it was true and false at once. Inside were 60 items, all decoys, all marked with invisible dots, all designed to expose anyone who used them as leaked predictions. But I added one more thing, a cover page in my handwriting that read, "For personal error checking only. Contains intentionally incorrect examples." Then I folded the page backward so the warning faced the inside flap. Anyone opening the envelope honestly would see it. Anyone stealing fast would photograph the visible pages and miss it. I locked the locker and walked away. At 9:40 during economics, my phone vibrated once. Unknown number. You should have shared. I read it, took a screenshot, and put my phone face down. Clara sat 2 rows away, copying notes with her left hand while her right hand rested on her phone beneath the desk.
She did not look at me. Good.
At 10:15, a fire drill rang. That had not happened in my first life. For a second, confusion pierced my confidence. Students groaned, chairs scraped, teachers shouted instructions. In the chaos, everyone moved toward the field. Lockers were unattended. Corridors emptied. A perfect window. Too perfect. I looked across the room at Clara. She looked back, and in her eyes was triumph. The fire drill was fake. Not fake as an imaginary, but scheduled by Elise, who had access to committee announcements and had swapped the practice time with another class monitor. I learned that later. In the moment, I only knew the timeline had bent. My old plan had assumed Clara would act at lunch. Now she had 10 unsupervised minutes while the building evacuated. I walked with my class toward the stairwell, calm on the outside, calculating inside. If I broke formation, teachers would notice. If I accused Clara without seeing her, she would cry. If I did nothing, she might plant the fake page and trigger the same disaster early. Then the pattern broke in my favor. Halfway down the stairs, Ms. Arden realized she had left the attendance clipboard in homeroom and asked for a student runner. I raised my hand before anyone else breathed. I'll go. She hesitated. Quickly. I turned back upstairs, each step echoing like a countdown. The second-floor corridor was empty except for sunlight and the distant alarm pulse. Locker 417 stood closed. At the far end, near the staff side hallway, a figure slipped around the corner. Not Clara. Elise. She moved fast, badge swinging. In her hand was a white envelope. My old blood went cold. I did not chase her. That would be noise. Instead, I went to homeroom, grabbed the clipboard, and deliberately passed under the corridor security camera on my way back. As I passed my locker, I let my sleeve brush the door. Still locked. But something small and white protruded from the vent. A corner of paper. She had not opened it. She had inserted something. I did not touch it. I returned to the field, handed Ms. Arden the clipboard, and stood beside my classmates while Clara watched me from the third row, trying to read my face. I gave her nothing. When we entered the building, Mr. Orr was already in the corridor. That was my doing, though Clara did not know it yet. Before the fire drill, I had scheduled an email to send at 10:17 to Ms. Arden, Dr. Sun, Mr. Halden, and Mr. Orr. It said, politely and without accusation, that I was concerned someone might attempt to place unauthorized materials in or near my locker during the evacuation, and that I requested a staff witness before I touched anything. I had written it at midnight after realizing Elise might control timing. I did not know if it would matter. It mattered. Mr. Orr stood with his arms folded, expression grave. Ms. Arden stood beside him, reading from her phone. Clara's steps slowed when she saw them. Elise appeared from the staircase and froze so abruptly the girl behind her bumped into her shoulder. Mira, Mr. Orr said, "Is this your locker?" "Yes, sir." "Do not open it yet." Students began gathering, whispers blooming. Clara moved closer, then stopped when Ms. Arden looked at her. Mr. Orr photographed the paper corner protruding from the vent. He used gloves from the science prep kit to pull it free. It was a folded printout. My stomach clenched even though I knew this was coming. He opened it. On the top was written in handwriting painfully close to mine. Confirmed final essay topics. Underneath were 3 prompts formatted exactly like restricted teacher materials. In my first life, this page had been inside my envelope. This time, because I changed the code, it was sticking stupidly out of a vent like a snake that failed to enter hole. Mr. Orr's jaw tightened. "Who placed this here?" Silence. 100 eyes shifted. Clara whispered, "Mira?" Her voice trembled in public perfect fear. I looked at her, then at the paper. "Not me," I said. "And I can prove the locker code was changed Monday morning after concerns about unauthorized access." Clara blinked. Elisa's face strained. The corridor became a courtroom with fluorescent lights. Mr. Orr dismissed most students, but nobody truly left. They hovered at corners, pretended to tie shoes, walked slowly past water fountains. Clara stayed because she said she was worried about me. Elise stayed because leaving would look worse. I opened my locker under staff supervision. Inside sat the decoy binder, the sealed top 60 traps envelope, my spare cardigan, and a packet of mints. Nothing else. Mr. Orr examined the envelope. "May I open this?" "Yes, sir," I said. Clara's eyes sharpened. This was the moment she expected disaster. In her mind, either the fake leak would be found inside, or my trap notes would look suspicious enough to stain me. Mr. Orr opened the envelope and pulled out the cover page. For the first time all week, Clara's face did something she could not control. She flinched. Ms. Arden read aloud, "For personal error checking only. Contains intentionally incorrect examples." The silence after that sentence was almost beautiful. Mr. Orr looked through the pages. These are intentionally wrong? Yes, sir. I use them to test whether I can spot common mistakes. That was academically plausible because it was true enough. I submitted my real notes to my teachers yesterday for timestamping. Ms. Arden nodded slowly. You did. Mr. Orr turned to the folded printout from the vent. And this? I've never seen it before today. Clara stepped forward, tears rising. But why would anyone put that in your locker? There it was, the soft redirect. Not who did it. Why would anyone make me sound suspicious by existing near the crime? I turned to her with the gentlest voice I owned. I was hoping you could tell me. Her tears paused before falling. Too late. Everyone saw the pause. Elise tried to save them by becoming offended. Are you accusing Clara? She snapped. That's disgusting. She's been crying all week because you turned everyone against her. Mr. Orr lifted one hand. Elise, this is not the time. But Elise had inherited the Vale family flaw. They mistook volume for control when charm failed. No, sir, it matters. Mira has been acting paranoid, hiding notes, making everyone uncomfortable, and now suddenly there's a dramatic locker incident? Maybe she staged it. In my first life, that accusation would have shattered me. In this life, it opened the next door. I reached into my bag, removed a folder, and placed it in Ms. Arden's hands. This contains screenshots, timestamps, and a copy of the black envelope I received Wednesday. I didn't accuse anyone because I wasn't sure who was involved. I wanted staff to handle it properly. Mr. Orr took the folder. Clara looked at it as if it were a blade. Inside were printed screenshots of the unknown text, the class chat messages, photos of my decoy binder in my locker after the code change, the warning note, the broken hair taped to a dated index card, the receipt from my bag with the time written on it, and a list of teachers who had received my real notes. Nothing alone proved everything. Together, they formed a net. Mr. Orr's expression changed from concern to investigation. Elise, he said, were you in the second-floor corridor during the fire drill? Elise opened her mouth, closed it. I had committee duties. During evacuation? I was checking. We'll confirm with the cameras. At the word cameras, Clara's tears finally fell, but now they looked less like grief and more like water escaping a cracked pipe. Finals were still 3 days away, and that was the strangest part. In my first life, the locker incident ended my future before I reached the exam room. This time, it did not end anything immediately. Mr. Orr collected the planted printout, informed the exam office, and told us not to discuss the matter while they reviewed footage. That order lasted exactly 9 seconds after he left. By lunch, the school had split into weather systems. Some people believed I had exposed a setup. Some believed Clara was being framed. Some believed Elise had done something, but Clara was innocent. Some believed all top students were secretly insane. I sat in the courtyard under the jacaranda tree with my lunch untouched while rumors moved around me like insects. Clara did not approach. She stood near the vending machines surrounded by friends, crying into a sleeve while Elise whispered furiously beside her. Then another interruption came. Daniel Park, rank 3, captain of the debate team, and professional survivor of academic chaos, sat across from me without asking. Your decoy notes are circulating, he said. I looked up. What? He slid his phone across the table. On screen was a photo of one of my trap pages, the economics multiplier formula, copied from a private group chat named Final Lifeboat. My pulse sharpened. Clara had not only stolen my notes, she had distributed them. In the last life, she had used them privately and then watched me die publicly. This time, fear had made her generous. How many people are in that chat? I asked. Daniel grimaced. 26. Are you in it? My lab partner added me. I didn't use anything. I thought you should know. I studied his face. In my first life, Daniel had avoided me after the accusation. Not cruelly. Cowardly. People call themselves neutral when they are afraid to stand near fire. This time, he looked ashamed before I even accused him. Why tell me? I asked. He pushed his glasses up. Because page 3 says fiscal leakage increases the multiplier, and even half asleep I know that's wrong. For the first time in days, I laughed. That laugh changed something. Not because anything was funny, but because it reminded me I was not trapped inside the old ending anymore. I had allies I never noticed because Clara had isolated me before I knew I needed them. Daniel helped me identify 3 group chats where my decoy pages had spread. Find a lifeboat, rank rescue, and a dorm chat titled Don't Tell Mira, which was so stupidly named I had to stare at it twice. He did not send me screenshots directly because he worried about privacy rules, but he agreed to show them to Ms. Arden. By the end of lunch, 6 students had quietly approached me, each with the same guilty face. I didn't know they were stolen. Clara said you gave them to her before fighting. Elise said they were committee-approved review sheets. I only looked once. Their excuses varied. Their fear did not. I told each one the same thing. Show the teachers now before finals. It was not mercy. It was strategy. A scandal involving stolen notes could be minimized. A scandal involving widespread unauthorized materials days before finals could not. At 2:30, Ms. Arden called me into the year office. Mr. Orr was there along with Dr. Sun and the exam coordinator, Mrs. Weller. Clara sat in the corner with red eyes. Elise stood behind her, arms crossed, face pale with fury. On the desk lay printed screenshots from multiple students. Mrs. Weller tapped one page. Mira, did you distribute these materials? No. Did you authorize Clara Vale to distribute them? No, Clara made a broken sound. You said we always shared. I looked at her. There were so many things I could have said. Instead, I chose the simplest knife. Not after I changed my locker code. Silence can expose more than shouting. Clara's head snapped up. What does that mean? It means you knew the old code. Everyone knows people use birthdays. Did you try mine?
No.
Too fast. Mrs. Weller leaned forward. Clara, we are not asking whether you guessed in theory. We are asking whether you accessed Myra's locker, bag, or notes without permission. Clara's tears returned on cue. I was just trying to survive finals. Everyone uses shared notes. Mira made me feel like I was nothing because I needed help. There was at last, stripped of sweetness. I needed, therefore I took. Dr. Sen's mouth tightened. Need does not create permission. Elise jumped in. You're all acting like Clara is some criminal. Mira obviously set her up with fake notes. I turned to Elise. How would I set up someone who never touched them? Elise's face changed. She had stepped where I wanted her. Mrs. Weller noticed too. Elise, she said carefully, why do you assume Clara had access to the notes? Elise's lips parted. No answer came. Clara looked at her cousin with pure panic. For a moment, their alliance flickered into something uglier. Blame searching for a body. Mr. Orr opened a laptop and turned it toward them. We reviewed corridor footage during the fire drill. Elise, you entered the second-floor corridor against evacuation procedure and approached locker 417. You inserted a paper into the locker vent. Elise went white. Clara whispered, you said there weren't cameras there. The room froze. It was the first honest sentence Clara had spoken all week, and it damned her more thoroughly than any accusation I could have made. Mrs. Weller asked me to step outside while they continued questioning. I stood in the hallway under a poster that said character is what you do when no one is watching, and almost laughed again because apparently character was also what you did when you forgot cameras existed. Through the office door, voices rose and fell. Clara cried. Elise denied. Mr. Orr remained low and firm. Dr. Sun said something about exam contamination. My legs suddenly felt weak. I sat on the bench and pressed my hands together. Victory, I discovered, does not feel like fireworks when it arrives after trauma. It feels like your body finally realizing it does not have to outrun the same knife anymore. I thought of my mother outside the gate in the rain. I thought of the expulsion letter, the revoked scholarship, the months I spent in my first life working at a convenience store while classmates started university. I thought of Clara visiting me once after everything, wearing a university hoodie that should have been mine, saying softly, I wish things had been different, while looking around my tiny apartment with satisfaction she could not hide. I had died at 23 in that life, Not dramatically, not poetically. Exhaustion, fever, an untreated infection because I kept delaying the doctor to cover shifts. My final memory was fluorescent convenience store light and the beep of a scanner. Then locker 417. Then 7 days. I had thought Rebirth would make me fearless. It did not. It made me precise. When the office door opened, Mr. Orr called me back in.
Clara would not look at me.
Elise looked as if hatred were the only thing keeping her upright. Mrs. Weller said, "The final exams will proceed, but any student who accessed or circulated unauthorized copied materials must submit a statement by tomorrow morning. We will provide corrected official review guidance to the cohort. Mira, you are cleared regarding the planted printout pending final documentation."
Cleared.
1 word. 6 letters. A life returned. Saturday should have been peaceful, but consequences never arrive in a straight line. By morning, parents had heard. By noon, the school issued a formal notice about unauthorized revision materials circulating among senior students. By afternoon, Clara's version evolved. She was no longer denying everything. She was misled. She had believed the notes were shared. Elise had acted alone with the locker printout because she was protective. The group chats were student panic. My decoy errors were malicious sabotage. That last claim almost worked on some people. It is easy to make self-defense look cruel if you start the story after the first wound. Clara posted a long message in the class chat. "I'm sorry for trusting materials that weren't officially mine, but I never meant to hurt anyone. I'm heartbroken that someone would intentionally create wrong notes knowing stressed students might use them." I read it twice, then typed my first public message of the week. The first page of the envelope states the examples were intentionally incorrect for my own error checking. The materials were kept in my private locker and bag after I refused to share them. Anyone who saw them did so without my permission. I attached nothing. No drama. Just a locked door. Daniel added, "I saw the warning page when shown to staff." Another student added, "I received the notes from Clara, not Mira." Another, same. Another. Elise said they were safe. The chat became a landslide. Clara stopped replying. I set my phone down and went back to studying. The real finals were still coming. Revenge would mean nothing if I let her drag my eyes away from the exam. That was the 4th rule. Do not stare at the falling person so long you miss the finish line. Sunday night, Clara did not sleep in our room. She claimed she was staying with her aunt because the dorm environment was hostile. Her bed looked strangely innocent without her in it. The little plush rabbit on her pillow, the skincare bottles lined by height, the photo strip of us from sophomore year still tucked into her mirror frame. In the first photo, I had bunny ears behind her head. In the second, she kissed my cheek. In the third, we were laughing so hard the frame blurred. I stood in front of that mirror for a long time, holding my toothbrush, remembering how loved I had felt that day. People ask why victims do not notice betrayal earlier. Because betrayal borrows the memories that made you feel safe and uses them as camouflage. I took the photo strip down, folded it once, and placed it in her drawer. Not destroyed. Not displayed. Just removed from my reflection. Then I sat at my desk and studied biology until dawn touched the curtains. The exam hall opened at 8. Finals began with literature, the subject Clara had once used to prove she was more naturally expressive than me after stealing my structure. I arrived early with 2 black pens, 1 blue pen, a ruler, student ID, water bottle with label removed, and nothing else. No notes.
No charms. No revenge tokens.
Clara entered 5 minutes before the bell. Her eyes found me immediately. She looked smaller somehow, as if the crying had washed the polish from her face. For one foolish second, I thought she might apologize. Then she walked past my desk and whispered, "You ruined everyone." I looked up. "No," I whispered back. "I changed a lock." Her mouth tightened. The invigilator called for silence. Papers turned face down.
The clock began.
The literature exam did not contain the prompt from the planted leak. Of course it did not. It contained a passage none of us had seen before and an essay question about moral blindness in ambition narratives. I almost smiled at the universe's lack of subtlety. Around me, pens began moving. Clara froze for 20 seconds too long. I saw it from the corner of my eye because she sat diagonally ahead. She had memorized my decoy framework, the one missing structural progression. Her introduction probably sounded beautiful. Her body paragraphs probably bled. I did not watch further. My own answer unfolded cleanly. Tone movement, narrative perspective, image pattern, structural escalation, final reversal. The real framework.
Mine. Earned.
When the exam ended, Clara remained seated after pens down, staring at her booklet as if it had betrayed her. Students poured into the courtyard buzzing about question 2. Did you mention the shift in the middle? Was the narrator unreliable? What did you do for ambition? Clara walked past them silently. Elise was not present. She had been suspended from committee duties, pending investigation. That absence mattered more than any announcement. Without Elise's badge, Clara was just another student with weak preparation and a talent for tears. The second exam was chemistry practical analysis. The decor notes had mislabeled a precipitate color in a complex ion reaction and reversed the explanation for buffer resistance. Clara used both. I knew because when Dr. Sun released the official solution outline after collection, Clara made a sound like someone stepping through ice. Her face turned gray, not pale.
Gray.
She looked at me across the lab benches, and for once, there was no performance left. Just recognition. The stolen notes were not saving her. They were leading her by the hand into every hole I had dug. I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt something colder and more complicated. Watching Clara fail did not restore the years she took from me in the first life. It did not erase my mother's rain-soaked face, or the convenience store light, or the feeling of dying with unpaid bills on the counter. It only proved that without theft, Clara was ordinary. That should have been enough. But revenge stories lie when they pretend exposure is a clean fire. Exposure is messy. Some classmates who used the stolen notes panicked after the first 2 exams and begged teachers for clarification. Some blamed Clara openly. Some blamed me privately. One girl, Nina, cornered me near the bathrooms with red eyes. You could have warned us, she said. I did, I replied, by not giving you my notes. That's not fair, Clara said. Clara said what helped Clara. Nina flinched. She had been kind to me once in sophomore year after I forgot lunch. She had also shared Clara's post about me acting secretive. People are rarely one thing. That made judgment harder, not softer. I'm going to fail economics, she whispered. I sighed. Then stop using anything from those chats. Read the official review sheet. Focus on mechanisms, not memorized predictions. She stared at me. Why are you helping me? Because you asked me directly instead of stealing. She cried then, not prettily, not strategically, just with the ugly fear of someone who understood too late that shortcuts charge interest. I gave her 10 minutes. No notes.
No binder.
Just verbal guidance anyone could have gotten by attending review. Clara saw us from the corridor. Her expression twisted. That was when I realized the deepest punishment for Clara was not failing. It was watching me remain someone she could not explain away as cruel. The third exam, economics, was the trap centerpiece. In my first life, Clara had scored highest in economics using my essay grids and the planted leak to destroy me. She loved economics because it rewarded confident structure, and confidence was her native language. This time, my decoy economics packet was the most dangerous thing I created. It contained a beautiful model essay arguing that automatic stabilizers intensify inflationary gaps under recession conditions, a statement so polished and so wrong that any teacher reading it would wince. It included a multiplier diagram with the injection leakage relationship reversed. It included a golden paragraph about currency depreciation improving trade balance immediately without discussing elasticities or lag effects. Every error was plausible to someone memorizing rather than understanding. When the exam question appeared, I felt the room inhale. Evaluate the effectiveness of fiscal policy responses to external shocks, using diagrams where appropriate. It was broad. It was fair. It was exactly the kind of question that punished stolen certainty. Clara began writing fast. Too fast. Her pen moved with the rhythm of memorization. Mine moved slower, building from definitions to transmission channels, limitations, timing, crowding out, confidence, external constraints. Halfway through, I heard a pen snap. Not loud enough to stop the exam, but loud enough for 3 heads to turn. Clara's shoulders trembled. Blue ink spread across her fingers. The invigilator brought her a replacement pen. She kept writing, but the line of her neck had changed. She knew, maybe not every mistake, but enough. Enough to feel the bridge cracking under her feet. When time was called, she stood so quickly her chair scraped backward. Everyone looked. She clutched her paper, forgot she had to leave it on the desk, and the invigilator gently took it from her hands. That small surrender looked like a verdict. After economics, Clara finally approached me without an audience. She found me behind the old gym, where students went to breathe between exams because teachers hated the damp smell and rarely checked there. The concrete wall was warm from sun. I was eating an apple, though my stomach wanted nothing. She appeared at the corner with ink still on her fingers and her hair ribbon loose. "Did you enjoy that?" she asked. Her voice had no tears left. I took another bite of the apple. It tasted sharper than I expected. "Enjoy what?" "Watching me use your fake notes." There it was. Not allegedly. Not if. Use. A confession wrapped in accusation. I swallowed slowly. "Why did you use them?" "Because you made them look real." "Why did you have them?" Her jaw clenched. "You knew I would look." "No," I said. "I knew you might steal." "That's different." She laughed once, hard. "Don't act noble. You wanted me to fail." I looked at her ink-stained hands. "In my last life, you wanted me erased." The words escaped before I could stop them. Clara stared.
What?
The air shifted. For one dangerous second, I almost told her everything. That I remembered the hearing, the expulsion, her university hoodie, my death. That I knew her cruelty had already succeeded once. But some truths are too large for people who cannot admit small ones. I shook my head. Nothing. "You're insane," she whispered. "Maybe." I threw the apple core into the bin. "But I'm not expelled." She stepped closer. "You think they'll believe you forever? People get tired of perfect victims." "Good," I said. "I'm not trying to be perfect." Her eyes shone then, not with sadness, but hatred. "I'll tell them you planned this." "Tell them," I said. "Use details." She understood the threat. Every detail she used would reveal how much she had taken. The investigation moved faster after that because Clara, cornered, started making mistakes. She submitted a written statement claiming I had previously allowed her to borrow notes many times, which was true, then implied that the decoy binder was a continuation of that habit, which was not. She claimed she photographed pages from my desk because she believed they were shared. She claimed she did not know Elise planted anything. Elise, meanwhile, claimed Clara begged her to help scare Mira into sharing. Neither statement matched the other. The school did not need criminal standards, it needed academic integrity findings. By Tuesday evening, Clara was barred from holding any student office, Elise was removed from exam committee duties permanently, and every student who circulated the materials had to sign an integrity declaration before continuing finals. Clara was allowed to sit the remaining exams, but under separate supervision. That details spread like wildfire. Separate supervision. It sounded worse than suspension because it meant the school still wanted to watch her. In the dorm, her belongings remained untouched, but she did not return. I slept in silence for the first time all week, and the silence was not peaceful. It was enormous. I dreamed of locker 417 opening by itself, pages spilling out like white birds, each one printed with my name crossed through. I woke before dawn with my nails dug into my palm. Rebirth had given me a second chance, but it had not erased fear. It had only given fear a clipboard, a plan, and a better memory. I washed my face, tied my hair back, and prepared for biology. Biology had been my strongest subject in both lives. In the first, I never got to sit the final because the disciplinary suspension began before the exam. That absence had haunted me more than the failed subjects. I had loved biology. The logic of systems, the elegance of feedback loops, the way a tiny mutation could alter a whole organism, the way structure revealed function if you looked patiently enough. Clara hated biology because it resisted performance. You could decorate an answer, but you could not charm a synapse into firing differently. The exam hall felt colder that morning. Clara sat in the front row near the invigilator, separated by 2 empty desks from everyone else. Her face was bare, no ribbon, no softness. When the paper began, my hands steadied. The questions unfolded like doors I had spent years waiting to open. Endocrine feedback, meiosis errors, kidney regulation, immune response, experimental design. I wrote until my wrist ached. Near the end, a question asked students to identify an error in a labeled diagram and explain the consequence. I nearly laughed because half my decoy biology notes consisted of mislabeled diagrams. Clara stared at that question for a long time. Her shoulders sank. Perhaps she remembered the stolen page where I had intentionally swapped afferent and efferent labels in a nephron diagram. Perhaps she realized she no longer knew which of her memorized images were safe. That was the true trap, not the wrong notes themselves, but the collapse of trust in stolen knowledge. When you build your confidence from theft, one exposed lie makes every borrowed fact tremble. She erased so hard her paper tore. I did not look again. By the final day, the school had become quieter around me. Not kind, exactly. Careful. People who had once teased me for being intense now asked before sitting beside me. Teachers checked in without pitying. Daniel brought me coffee and said, "Not poisoned," then immediately looked horrified by his own joke. I laughed anyway. Nina passed economics, or believed she might, and whispered thank you near the stairwell. Clara remained under separate supervision. Elise had vanished from campus after her parents met with Mr. or rumor said her aunt in administration was also being questioned about restricted materials. That rumor mattered because in my first life, nobody had ever looked above Clara. They accepted the planted page, as if it fell from heaven into my locker. This time, the chain had links and someone was finally pulling them. The last exam was mathematics. In my decoy packet, mathematics traps were subtle: a sign error in integration by parts, a probability condition reversed, a geometry shortcut that worked for one diagram but failed generally. Clara had always survived math by memorizing my solution patterns. Without them, she was not helpless, but she was slow. The exam began. I moved steadily through the paper, not perfectly, but honestly. There was a difficult final question worth 12 marks. In the first life, I had written a similar one during practice, and Clara had copied my method. This version required recognizing that the obvious substitution created a dead end. I paused, breathed, started again, and found the path. Across the room, Clara turned pages back and forth. Her lips moved silently. With 10 minutes left, she stopped writing. Not because she finished, because she had reached the place where stolen patterns ended. When the final bell rang, the room did not explode into celebration the way senior classes usually do. Too much had happened. Chairs scraped softly. Pens were capped. Papers were collected like evidence. Outside, sunlight spilled across the steps. Students hugged, groaned, laughed from nerves. Clara came out last. For a moment, nobody moved toward her. That, more than any official punishment, marked the end of her reign. Her power had always depended on people rushing to comfort her before asking what she had done. Now they watched first. She looked at me across the courtyard. I expected hatred. Instead, I saw exhaustion so complete it almost resembled honesty. She walked over slowly. Daniel tensed beside me, but I shook my head. Clara stopped an arm's length away. "I didn't know it would go that far," she said. The sentence was small. It might have been the beginning of an apology, if she were someone else. I asked, "Which part?" Her brow furrowed. "What? Which part went farther than you expected? Stealing from my locker? Photographing my bag? Circulating my notes? Letting Elise plant a leak? Preparing to accuse me if you were caught? Which part surprised you?" Color rose in her face, then drained. I was scared. So was I. "You don't understand what it's like to always be behind you. That old guilt leash brushed my throat one last time. I almost felt it tighten. Then I remembered my mother in the rain. "You're right," I said. "I don't. I only understand what it's like to have someone behind me holding a knife and calling it friendship." Clara's eyes filled, but the tears no longer moved me. "Mira, no," I said. "Finals are over. So are we." The results came 2 weeks later in sealed envelopes and online portals that crashed twice before breakfast. I opened mine at the kitchen table with my mother standing behind me pretending not to hover. Overall rank: first. Literature, 94. Chemistry, 96. Economics, 97. Biology, 99. Mathematics, 95. Scholarship recommendation, confirmed pending final conduct clearance. My mother made a sound I had never heard before, something between a laugh and a sob, and wrapped both arms around my shoulders. I let myself lean into her. In my first life, results day had been a blank space because I had no results worth opening. In this life, numbers glowed on the screen like small repaired stars. But the true result arrived that afternoon at school. Clara's name was absent from the honors list. Not low, absent. Students whispered that several of her exam responses matched the decoy errors too closely to be coincidence, not enough for cheating charges in every subject, but enough to confirm unauthorized reliance on stolen materials. Her scholarship application was withdrawn. Elise received a formal disciplinary record and lost her external recommendation. The aunt in administration resigned quietly before the term ended. No dramatic police car.
No screaming hallway collapse.
Just doors closing one by one, the way mine had closed in the first life. I saw Clara once more by locker 417. She was removing her belongings from the dorm's storage box, her hair tied carelessly, her face bare. She looked at the locker, then at me. "What was the new code?" she asked suddenly. I almost ignored her. Then I smiled. "Something you never knew." She laughed bitterly. "Your mother's birthday?" "No." "Your student number?" "No," she waited. I stepped closer, lowered my voice, and said, "The date I stopped trusting you." Her face went still. I turned the dial, opened the locker, removed the last of my books, and closed it for the final time. Graduation arrived under a hot white sky. The school decorated the hall with blue ribbons and banners about integrity, resilience, and excellence, because institutions love turning disasters into themes. I sat in the front row, scholarship medal cool against my collarbone, listening to speeches about character. Clara was present but seated near the back with her parents. She still graduated, barely, because the school chose containment over complete destruction. Some people thought that was unfair to me. I did not. I had not returned from death to spend my second life begging for maximum punishment. I wanted my name cleared, my future restored, my work protected, and the truth documented where tears could not wash it away. I got all of that. When my name was called as valedictorian, a murmur moved through the hall. In my first life, Clara had crossed that stage wearing the medal meant for me. This time, my shoes struck the wooden steps. My hands did not shake when I unfolded my speech. I had written 3 versions. One angry, one polished, one safe. I chose the 4th version, the one I drafted at 3 a.m. after dreaming of the convenience store again. People often describe success as a race. I began, but this year taught me that success is also a locked room. It contains your effort, your failures, your private corrections, your late nights, your honest mistakes, and the parts of yourself still under construction. Not everyone has the right to enter that room. Not everyone who asks sweetly deserves the code. The hall went very quiet. I did not look at Clara. I did not need to. Generosity matters. Helping others matters. But help without boundaries becomes a door people can use to carry your life away while calling you selfish for noticing. I hope we all leave here brave enough to work, humble enough to ask properly, and honest enough to know the difference between sharing and taking. Applause began slowly, then rose. My mother cried openly. Ms. Arden wiped her eyes. Daniel grinned. And somewhere near the back, Clara sat motionless. After graduation, I walked alone to the senior corridor one last time. Most lockers were open, emptied, abandoned like shells after a tide. Locker 417 still had a faint scratch near the handle from years of use. I touched it gently. It was strange how small it looked now. This narrow metal box had held my ruin in one life and my evidence in another. It had been coffin, trap, witness, and finally just a locker. I thought Rebirth would ask me to become crueler than the person who hurt me. It did not. It asked me to become harder to access. There is a difference. Cruelty seeks pain for its own sake. Boundaries simply refuse to bleed on command. Clara had stolen my notes because she believed closeness entitled her to my labor. She had stolen my trust because she believed tears could rewrite permission. She had stolen my future once because I left the door open and called that love. This time, I changed the code. That was all. Not a sword, not a speech, not a slap in the courtyard. For new numbers turned quietly under my fingers, and the whole old tragedy lost its entrance. I left the corridor, stepped into the sun, and found my mother waiting by the gate with an umbrella, even though there was no rain. She lifted it anyway, embarrassed, and said, "Habit." I laughed, took it from her, and opened it above us both. In my first life, she had stood in the rain because of a lie. In this one, I stood beside her in sunlight because the truth had finally learned how to lock the door behind it.